I'm Gorish. I'm your host today. I have with me Bobby, about whom I'll share in just a minute. I'm the founder and CEO of Sybill. We started the company about 6 years ago now to build what the next generation of AI native revenue platform would look like. For most of the last decade, what we have seen is that revenue teams have focused a ton on visibility. Like we have been trying to build systems that will help see pipeline clearly. We have recorded calls. Gong, as most of you would know, has been instrumental in that early phase of call recordings. What we have found as I have gone through this journey is like most of the companies will end up stopping there. Like they can go back to listen to the conversation. It's like a library to go back, you figure out an old call that you have had, but we do not end up operationalizing those calls. We do not end up figuring out what else can be done. And that is one of the big shifts that we have seen with Sybil. The market is not looking to just understand or hear the customers better. They're trying to figure out how can we turn those customer conversations into strategic inputs that can drive product, that can drive marketing, and even sales execution. Because it's not visibility will help you get a sense of where you are getting towards. It will not really help you get there or get farther than where you would naturally hit. That operationalizing of the conversations is what you get there. And this happens when you can structure this kind of customer intelligence more properly. And when you do that right, it actually compounds across the entire organization. And this is where Bobby comes in. So, Bobby Dysart is the VP of sales at Compa. He has built GTM engines from zero at multiple companies. He has taken Nation Builder's enterprise ARR from 0 million to 15 million in under a year. And he has been at Compa for nearly 4 years, which means he hasn't just implemented this kind of system to operationalize customer intelligence. He has actually lived the before and after. So he understands the nitty-gritties both of company building as well as what it takes to operationalize an entire sales team. What I really, really love about Bobby and what the team at Compa have done is that they didn't just treat sales conversations as books in the library where they're keeping on adding more. They actually saw it as how can the company growth be accelerated using these conversations as raw material. For Compa right now, the product is using those customer conversations, marketing is using them, sales is using them. It's the same single data source, but then you have different leverage points. So I'm super excited today to have Bobby like take us back and walk through how he has done this entire shift in his organization. So Bobby, first help us understand like before any of this intelligence, this system was built, what would actually happen after a sales call ended at Compa?
Hey, thanks, Course, for having me on. I was super excited when Drew reached out and said, "Hey, let's do a webinar on how Compa uses Sybill." So, I think what happened is not much. Usually, at best, you would get some anecdotal feedback in Slack that would quickly fall into the Slack abyss of kind of going nowhere and just turning into noise as opposed to signal. It might make its way into a leadership meeting about product marketing, sales, what have you, where I saw this opportunity to make more of our conversations with customers was January last year. Charlie and I, our CEO, went on a roadshow of seeing 10 customers in 2 days. And our specific goal was to figure out if AI was still a dirty word. Because in our world, our world is enterprise compensation, right? The people that make the pay decisions at the biggest companies in the world. 9 out of 10 of those customer meetings, not only did they say they are ready, they're like, I have mandate to get AI. I need it. I want it. You are my vendor of choice. You like we
Wow.
trust you guys to deliver it. And the only way we had to get that information to our team was on our ride back to San Francisco in our hotel Charlie and I called on Bluetooth our CTO and said, all in on agents right now. We've heard it, heard it here first. And our world has changed so fast since then. And one of the big things was like, wow, it's going to keep changing faster. I need to find a way to get these insights, these conversations as quickly as possible to leaders across our business.
Wow. So what that's first of all a fascinating story. Like what I'm hearing is that you had the conversations, you had a way to like take those conversations, they would go into Slack feature requests, like, but still it was a lot of vibes on which things were happening. It was not like, okay, let's do this like operationally, very structurally. And after a while, it became noise, and you figured it out. Like, for example, the AI aspect, you figured it out once you had 10 conversations in a row, then you knew, oh, it was definitely something that was needed. So, how did you end up then structuring that information? I know you built three layers. Like, how did you fix this kind of thing? And I think one thing that surprises most people is like you are turning sales calls into product input. Like, let's start with there. Like, what was that process like?
I think Compa, more than most, like
Hmm.
always been laser focused on doing our best effort to not just keep us on the same page as our customers, but even keep us on the same page as each other, as departments. You've been running a startup for 6 years. Even in relatively small teams, sometimes marketing can be going this way,
Mm.
sales can be going that way. And so we were always pretty committed. And I think you brought up like my past history as sort of a 0 to 1 guy at different startups, even before I founded or I joined Comp, I should say. I was doing consultancy work for early stage, like seed stage startups. And the number one thing I always noticed after basically speed dating 15 entrepreneurs for
Mm.
4 years was like, man, these teams just lack focus and they
Mm.
lack alignment on what their customers need. And so when I came into Compa, I was just keenly aware of this problem and how it can potentially hold back fast moving teams that are, you know, trying to grow a
Mm.
startup. And so early on, like we did as best we could to mix engineers with sales, mix engineers with customers,
Mm.
have product folks, join, marketing events, et cetera. Like we've always sort of just had that commitment to it, but didn't have the right tools. We're just like it was always anecdotal. It was always a game of telephone. Like you're trying to remember off the cuff that conversation from that in-person event, or that conversation from a sales call on Zoom, or even just stuff that's happened on like chat interfaces of a Zoom webinar like this. And so I think we built up a lot of different infrastructure, for lack of a better word, whether formalized or informalized, to try to keep us on the same page. But it wasn't until we really started digging into Sybill that we're like, oh, like this is this is what we're looking for. This is sort of the automated, like easy button to accelerate our ability to mm, just really infuse customer information, both real and recent, into all corners of Compa.
Mm. I think I remember. So I'm on the board of a company and I advise a few other startups. And it's funny, I've realized this one thing where if you speak to all the co-founders in one go, everyone sometimes have a different perception of what they're building. And that's not a very uncommon scenario. It's like happens so often. Like the product and the technology co-founder will say something else, and the GTM co-founder will say something totally different. And I help me and help the audience here understand like what have you been doing on the ground, like in terms of how have you been taking the signal from Sybil and then converting it into these like outcomes for the organization, bringing everyone onto the same page on what should be done.
Yeah, well, it had to start with me and it had to start with the sales team, right? So
Hmm.
you know, we purchased Sybil, I want to say over a year ago, maybe 14 or 15 months. And candidly, it was kind of a slow start because it was really like onboarded by one of our lead AEs who was trying to
Mm,
just champion it. And, I had my own workflows, the sales team had their workflows. And I kind of looked around like 4 months in, and I was like, we're just not getting enough out of this very, capable technologies for advanced technology. And so I immediately went into just build mode of like, all right, how do I, you know, accelerate adoption with myself and with my sales team in like 3 weeks? We started with just sort of forcing the hand. I actually can pull it up. We had a 10-day live training plan where 3 times a week we would do a 15-minute stand up on something very specific within our
mm,
sales workflow to just make certain that everybody has a little light bulb go off in the morning of like, oh, this is how Natalie's using Sybill, or this is how Zach's using Sybill, or this is how I'm using Sybill. What I quickly noticed with particularly the Ask Sybill feature and the AI Sybill feature, like everybody interacts with it different. And there's a little bit of a chicken and egg where you're like, I kind of need to know the words to ask in order to ask them. And I'm going to get that from my peers. And so, yeah, like here, I'll pull this up real quick. So this is inside our basically our internal database called Notion.
mm.
And so this is a living artifact from our overall like sales playbook. And this is really what spurred the initial groundswell. So, just like a basic objective of,
Wow.
prepping for Sybil pre-meeting briefs. Here's an exact, reflection and an AE exercise, all the way down to like self-coaching for deal reviews, reflecting on after you go through whatever the exercise is. And what was really exciting is it just changed our adoption and our
Mm.
context on the sales team and again myself as a sales leader in like 2 weeks. And once we nailed it on the sales team, we could start leading by example the other functions.
So help me get a specific piece of like whose life was transformed the first, or was there someone like was it the A's?
Yeah, so their very first one was an AE on my team. His name was Pat Brassel. He was actually the guy who first took the very first demo with Sybil. And I think the feature that caught his attention was automatically updating fields in HubSpot,
Mm,
which every AE loves to do
yeah.
manually. And that got us through a really good purchase cycle. We were evaluating a few other vendors, and it sort of was, I think, the sticking point for making it an easy decision to go with Sybil. The sort of adoption, particularly across the rest of the business, that really started to accelerate after I had my own sort of eureka moment. And my moment was just, and I think you can appreciate this, Gorf, is like mighty sales team who for 2 years was me and two other people. But once we hit our growth trajectory in the beginning of last year, quickly it was like, oh, I have a sales and marketing team of 14,
Mm,
and I don't know what's going on.
yeah.
And, a pipeline forecast meeting once a week isn't going to cut it. Jumping in HubSpot, I'm going to get sort of overwhelmed with seeking out the information. And so I just went into Sybil, and I think I asked it a pretty generic question of like, hey, what's going on in our sales pipeline right now? And I was
Mm,
just blown away at how it took that really broad, kind of crappy prompt and educated me very quickly. In about 3 minutes, I felt way more connected to my bigger team and their
mm.
their business with our customers than I had in months. Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
and so then like when you got somebody like me, like I'm a sales leader. I've been around Compa for a long time, and I care about how well we do things. I care about everybody at our company developing from a growth perspective and specifically embracing AI and figuring out how it can change the world. Once I figured that out, I was going everywhere I could. I think it's 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 sort of a running joke. Like if somebody asks a question about a customer meeting, everybody now knows that Bobby's going to immediately say, "Have you asked Sybil?" And after that, like 10-day live training plan with the team, and we got everybody everybody on board. And again, I have had my sort of transformational moment. The next stage to getting it infused across
Mm.
everybody was every time I saw a customer question or an AE question in Slack, it was, have you asked Sybill? Have you asked Sybill? Somebody called me, it was like, have you asked Sybill? And again, that's where I think that's really where the connective tissue started to form.
Help me understand, like, sales team you are connected with, how did you end up operationalizing this for marketing and product as well? Like, how did you get those people to start using Sybil and then getting insights out of the sales call?
Yeah, so let's come back to product because we talked a little bit about that, and I've got a good story there. But I want to talk about Jonathan Jepson. He's our lead insights director, aka he's a compensation expert,
Okay.
which are the customers that we serve, the ICP in our business are compensation executives at the biggest companies in the world. And he has so much knowledge in his head. He's in some ways one of one subject matter expert. Our other insights director, Ashley Case, who's the former head of comp at Tesla, would we have all these subject matter experts on staff at Compa, but
Mm.
the information is most of the time staying in their head or it's getting distributed one at a time, meeting by meeting. They do produce like research briefs and market reports, but those take a good amount of time and effort to refine and publish. I was looking for a way like how do we get whatever's in his brain or her brain to our customers as quickly as possible? Because not everybody that's really smart and has a lot to give can sit down and write. Staring at
Yep.
a blank page with a cursor blinking is probably the scariest thing for
Mm.
both writers and non-writers. But for like the last, I don't know, 8, 10 months, I've been like, come on, Jonathan, the people need to hear what's in your brain. Can you please just sit down and write? After me and my director of content realized that's not going to happen, what we thought of was let's just interview him on what he's working on right now and have Sybil there. Jonathan got excited about our new evals product. It's essentially a feature of scoring how well our AI does at common compensation tasks.
Okay.
And we've seen an accelerated performance of the accuracy of our agent. And so he was genuinely curious. He's like, I want to do a really smart testing environment of this agent versus enterprise ChatGPT with regards to the same compensation questions. And he literally went in a lab with his other, compensation expert for like 4 hours to
Mhm.
design and complete this test. And we had this one-on-one with him, and you could just tell he was bursting with knowledge and so excited to tell the story, but didn't have the way of, communicating that. And so we turned on the Sybil, had an interview, and within 20 minutes, we basically had the shapings of what this article on LinkedIn ended up getting 89 likes, 6 comments. He probably has the impressions numbers,
Wow.
but those are good numbers for compensation content.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of them, right? And so it's a very objective, authentic reflection of his experience building a custom
Mm.
GPT to do compensation analysis. Goes through what it was like to build it, running the exact compensation tasks, the result in terms of the success rate, sort of the problems he noticed doing it in ChatGPT versus our analyst AI product. And now this is a workflow that's embedded into our SMEs. We've since produced content on retail compensation, on financial services and how they're dealing with transitions to AI. And we're really just getting started with this workflow.
So this post has been written by Sybil post the conversation.
That's right. It was
Mm.
articulated by the subject matter expert, transcribed by Sybil, edited and refined by our marketing team.
Wow. And do you have like a specific, like, does the marketing team uses a specific prompt that they have built out to take this information out? Like, how are you getting out which information and how that's converted into a content post?
Boris, actually, the template is not the special sauce. The special sauce is the interview style and
Mm-hmm.
interview framework. And Guess who ran that first interview? It was
Yeah.
me. And I reported on Sybill. I used Sybill to create an interview framework for our marketing team
Hmm.
to squeeze out this kind of content.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. And what, like, this is amazing. Are there other similar use cases that the team has figured out, like on the product side or on the marketing side, like which you have been using to build more interviews?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we got salespeople on here and sales leaders. So, I'd be remiss, like, as we're trying to move really fast. Again, our AI product didn't exist 7 months ago. Now it represents like more than half of our business. And we were already selling a very innovative data product. And so our team had to very quickly be like, guys, I know you just got your hands wrapped around this sales process, but now we have to go do this new sales process.
Hmm.
Because I could tell it was just slightly off given our expanded product set into AI and the kind of buyers and buying cycles we were serving. And so out of just necessity, I kind of figured something out on how to sell AI to our customers. Again, I recorded myself demoing our new AI product,
Okay.
turned it into basically a standard operating procedure to quickly distribute my workflow for demoing our analyst
Oh,
AI agent. Now, this is a working doc for our team to onboard or learn how to sell our analyst AI product. So it includes a Sybill recording and includes some other links that are helpful. And then it shares exactly like why we make this change, the framing of the demo, exactly how to succeed at this demo, what questions to ask, etc.
and this goes back to every rep who's trying to onboard onto this new product layer.
That's right. And then from a product perspective, my other sort of favorite recent Sybill story, we had this brand new applied AI leader join our team. He was actually the first engineering team member that slapped calendar time on my calendar.
Hmm.
Engineers and sales, we get along when we have to, but I've never had somebody proactively reach out to me. And he put time on my calendar on like a Monday afternoon. I was like, "Hey man, what's going on? How can I help you?" And he's like, "I just want to know how customers are responding to our approach to AI. Maybe they're hung up on
Long
what
view
are their
conversation.
challenges." And I go, "Hey man, like I value my perspective as much as anybody, and I will share everything I possibly can.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna give you a way better place to look. There's this tool called Sybil, and I'm really smart. I have a really good memory, but Sybil is way more comprehensive than I am. And we got him a login that day, and he took my advice and he actioned it right away into to some of the early project work. So much so that I noticed it was like 2 weeks later, I saw a thread on like basically, should we build this feature? Should we not? And that brand new engineering
Hmm.
leader writes in thread, has anybody asked Sybil? I was like, my man, he's spreading the gospel.
One last aspect of that part, like when you are building this, like you build this AI plan for, or this plan for your AI analyst AI, how are you then using it, or how are you then ensuring that the team stays on track? What are you doing to coach your reps and train them and ensure, like, where do they need to improve and where do they need to sort of, where those best practices can be shared with the rest of the team?
Yeah, so I mean the number one way is, it's one thing if I use AI, use Sybil, it's another, totally different experience, and I'd argue way more full experience when the AEs are doing it themselves.
Mm,
And specifically for what I consider, objective deal coaching, right? I'm an emotional guy. The AE, particularly when they're talking about opportunities that impact their quota, their livelihood, they can get really emotional. Civil doesn't get emotion, right? And so I think early on, I tried to mm, prescribe using Sybil to identify risks
mm,
and and areas of opportunity to coach yourselves, right? Like take that as a gift, not as a critique or something to be, again, just sort of feel bad about or bummed about. And so I think at the AE level, at our best, is when the reps are writing in prompts like right after that, right after a meeting, like how could I have done better? What are three things that maybe I three questions I didn't ask, or where should I have paused instead of continued to speak? And I've seen tons of just little transformations here or there
Mm,
where a rep, they didn't think that they didn't, remember that they had kind of sped over a piece of the demonstration where the customer kind of said like, "Hey, can you go a
mm.
little bit deeper on that?" But once they interacted with Sybil, it was sort of just going to give it to them straight. That's where, again, that's where really like the transformation, the growth, the learning has taken place.
As the team, like, is that something where you're measuring the change of before and after? Like, how do you know that this transformation is happening? Like, or is it just some things that you hear from reps or from the conversations that you are part of?
I use it as a sales leader as well to get.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in risk, right? Like we're a fast growing startup. We raised our Series B, a couple months ago. We have the best customers in the world. A lot of things are going right,
Mm,
right? So I don't need flooded with more information on what's going right. Right now I need flooded with what's going wrong or where the risks are. And so when I go in, that's what I'm constantly asking is like, and I'm narrowing Sybil's focus to risk, where I'm saying, hey, I want to know the three risks to the next 10 deals that I expect to close. I don't
mm,
want anything else, right? That's what I want. Or I want the three trends across my last 60 sales meetings for my team that are killing our deal cycles. And then I use that along with our sales directors to do coaching one-on-one, team trainings, et cetera. So that's one other big piece. Certainly I use it and our sales directors use it on that level. The other proof point that change is happening when reps have those moments, they share about it, right? So we have a training later this afternoon where one of our top AEs took the compilation of, I don't know, I want to call it 6 or 7 meetings with, this is like a top 20 tech companies, a big company, and he had landed a meeting with the CHRO. It was a really important
yeah.
meeting to get
Yep.
right. He was bringing in our CEO, and the number one thing that he could bring to the table was context from the last 6 months, how we've interacted with their team, what that CHRO's team members are struggling with, specific quotes from specific people on her team. And he used that information to create a executive brief to catch her up to speed really quickly.
Yeah.
And she was just very appreciative of
Mm,
not just getting information from his team, but he actually even tied it, or from her team, I should say, but even tied it to some publicly available quotes about her insistence on adopting AI, the strategic focus of her team and function and in the business. Sort of compiled that all together to really nail the relevance piece of that meeting.
mm,
And so again, the more that I see our AEs doing that, where they're like sharing their artifacts of
mm.
working with Sybil or other AI solutions in Slack, in meetings, in one-on-ones, that's how we know the change is happening from a qualitative perspective.
Wow. Bobby, tell me this. Like, what would be sort of, and this is sort of a sidetrack, like, but what would be the top thing that if Sybil could solve more for your team, what would be your number one feature request from us?
Gosh, number one feature request. Well, I think everything's going to agents, right? And it's more that automation of like setting up something to happen while I'm sleeping or I'm in my
Hmm.
meetings, etc. I just built my first agent last night using Clay,
Hmm.
and um,
Congratulations.
thank you, thank
It's
you.
just,
Not only was it like really cool to get it working, but the process for building was very
Hmm.
it was very natural language minded, right? So I didn't have to like struggle through finding where this filter is or where that filter is. I didn't have to like learn the software, so to speak.
Hmm.
I just described exactly what I was doing, and then the agent built some pieces of it. I was like, no, that's not quite right. I haven't seen that with Sybil. If it does exist, forgive me.
Hmm.
But that kind of tick. And then now, again, that agent, all I have to do is feed it accounts. And so it's an insights agent. It gathers very important research and translates that research into effective messaging for
Yeah.
unique prospects, right? Like I can just do that, and I can just feed it accounts and it just handles that. That's where I need to go with Sybil next.
Hmm.
From whether it's automated insights on where deals are or are not going, opportunities to re-engage accounts, all the different sales doings.
Yeah.
I think that's what's next.
Perfect. Yeah. And that is such a good way to put it. And I just, if I can share with the rest of the folks here, this is a big part of what our push is, as you can imagine. But the beauty of what we are doing is that your agent is not contextless. Because we have been capturing all of these conversations 3 years now, even longer in some cases, we have built up such a rich repository of how the company's sales process, how its individual team members, how the customers behave, that any agent that we build next will have this rich context and you won't have to manually feed it. As an example, for this account planning research, and this is something we plan to build both as an agent internally, but also we can take the server, like the MCP server, and feed it to all of the other agents out there. The beauty of this is like if you're doing account research, you already know what kind of accounts and what personas in those accounts are super excited about Compa and what Compa's team, like how the messaging resonates to those specific personas. You don't have to give it a playbook or a doc for those individuals. The agent could actually match a specific kind of either an AI forward CHRO to a specific messaging with what has already like with another AI forward CHRO or vice versa to an AI laggard CHRO and do the same. And those are two separate messaging with two separate individuals, and they both land differently. So this is like one example, but you could imagine like any agent that can be built. We are right now in the process of building a deck builder agent. So you have all of your conversations at any point in the deal process. If you want to create a deck out of the entire set of history of conversation with that customer, so Sybil will automatically build that deck, attach it to the email so you can send it across, or you can download it as PDF. That's like just like,
And what I love about that, right? Like the feature I always want is what we're already doing, but we're kind of doing it. And so that's exactly what my top AE did, but he had to sort of stitch together stuff from Sybil, stuff from Claude, stuff from HubSpot in order to get there. If you can just not only just do it all right in Sybil, but also set it up to automate where it's like,
yeah,
hey, like just agent, every week I want you to scan the most like engaged customer calls and from that engagement automatically produce a piece of content, a brief,
yeah,
a demo talk track, whatever it is, and then share it out in Slack so the team can say like, oh wow, this is what's resonating most this week. Let's put this into
yeah,
action.
yeah. I think one of the beautiful ways someone shared this with me, like they would wish, like they had a call, they went for a coffee run, and they came back, and every single action items was done. The LinkedIn connection request was either sent or in the inbox for review. The message to the manager or the team as an update was like already for review. Decks were attached. Proposal, if it's like you have to go to Stripe or to a CPQ software to create a proposal, that's a big deal for the rep. That's a painful job. Like, can I just have the link for the draft for review? I love that vision. And that is essentially what we are working towards in the next 6 to 10 months. over here at Sybil. I want to close out, and I do have one question before we end, but just summarizing, I think if I were to zoom out for a second, like what I love about what the model that Bobby has built is that it's not different teams using different product layers, using different sources of data. It's actually the same intelligence layer, which is powered by your sales conversations, by your customer conversations, which is, if you think about it, in any organization, what the customers are sharing is probably one of the most richest sources of data. And Bobby, what you've done really beautifully is you've helped the teams use that same data in multiple ways. Like your product is using to figure out what has to be built. Marketing using our marketing is using it to build content and what messages is resonating. And then sales is using to help with execution discipline. Like what can they do better? How can they do it better? Understanding both like the customers as well as themselves in order to create the right moment, the right pace of execution. It's the same source of truth, but it creates this different leverage. And that is what I love about sales as a whole and the conversation, how rich those conversations can become. Bobby, before we close this webinar, one question for you. You are in the space, you have your own, as you shared, an analyst agent. Your team is coming in from an enterprise heavy background and they're moving to this world of selling AI. What is either scaring them or how are they feeling about AI coming into their lives? Are they in the mindset of like, okay, AI is going to help me make me much better? Or I've heard this angle of AI is going to take my job. And so I should be scared of what it brings. And where do you, like, how do you guide the team to be more AI forward, essentially? Because it seems like you are building your own agent. So you know, like, AI is going to be the future. But how do you get that culture instilled into your team?
Yeah, so no, we're definitely not the scared ones. We're the embrace ones. And it just starts with action. Like you have to get your hand on the technology or the headlines are going to be too loud. The uncertainty is going to be too big. Once you get into any sort of, artificial intelligence solution, the wheels start to turn on like, oh wow, like this can really impact my work, my team's work. And so, again, just having those initial 15-minute stand-ups, I think combine that with like that's what, again, it just started getting the light bulb going off for everybody individually of like, oh wow, this is how it's going to completely change my world. And again, for the better. You combine that with I announced this at the SKO. We had our SKO 26 days ago. And I said, if you work at Compa, you are going to be world-class users of AI. Like that's
Hmm.
a genuine, gift that I want to make sure I give to my team, whether they're here working with me for 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years, because that's bigger than them hitting their quota. That's bigger. I
Hmm.
really care about the career trajectory of my team, whether they've been here a couple months or a couple of years. And if there's anything I've noticed that there's a pre-AI world and a post-AI world. And in the post-AI world, if you embrace it and you figure it out, it's not making you a less valuable employee, it's making you a much more valuable employee.
And how do you get the team to start actually going into a terminal, like what you did with Clay? Like, do you show them that output and see that excitement? Like, what's that
That's
journey
that's
like?
right. It's we're human beings, man. Everybody follows examples and wins, and people get excited about seeing transformations. So I have to lead by example. Right? I'm definitely not the most technical savvy guy, but I embrace it as much as I can. I share my follies, I share my wins. The important part is, trial and error and communicating that to everybody and inviting people in to participate in their own trial and error in their own way.
That's awesome. Bobby, again, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate your insights as a sales leader, as an AI forward sales leader. I think that's it's we are all in a phase of our journeys of our lives where AI has become such a transformative power, and our teams need to adopt it both for their own career development and also for the growth in their current roles. So the fact that you're able to enable the team with AI, teach them how to use AI, be more experimental with it, like just learn and grow as a result is phenomenal. We do have a couple of questions that came up. If you have a couple of minutes, I
Let's go.
through chat. So first one is like, what's a prompt that you are using most often as a sales leader?
I don't know if I would say it's most often. I'm more like a framing of how I prompt. So I just did a big one for this pipeline review meeting that I have with our CEO tomorrow. So I'd answer that question two ways. One, if you prompt broadly, you're going to get a broad response. And most of us hate broad response. You prompt specific, you're going to get a specific response. So really take the time to prompt with intention and with clarity, with exactly what you're looking for. And so whether it's I might be able to share this. I'll do this insights prompt. Yeah, so I think you guys can see this. It's a long one. Like really good prompts, they're kind of
Mhm.
long, but you really want to be very specific. And so for like this research prompt that I have, you're probably not going to be able to read this. Can you read that, Gorish?
We can see some of it.
Let's see a zoom in here. So expert compensation analysis research. I want your help doing some deep research on company. I've attached two market intelligence, drafts. Both present information that should be relevant to these teams, but I need your help finding specific challenges of this company's business where this market information might uniquely impact the company. I want you to research the web to find this information, including specific quotes from their leadership, specific announcements in our projects, and unique business challenges and opportunities. The more unique, the better. I don't want general information. I want concrete examples where the market information presented in these slides matter more to this company for clear, specific reasons, right? And
Mm,
so whether I'm doing a specific research prompt or I'm
mm,
prompting it for deal information, you got to be very, very precise and specific, as if you're asking a task of the smartest, intern ever,
mm,
right? They could be the smartest, fastest intern ever, but if you don't really prescribe what you're looking for,
mm.
you're going to get a very ambiguous and broad response back.
I love that. Yeah. So I know Kate is great at discovery. So what I have been using Sybill for is like, okay, look at discovery that Kate does and look at discovery that all of the other reps do and compare the discovery areas for Kate versus those other reps. And then do that same for like, I know that Matt is great at setting up next steps and pushing the customers for the next meeting or the next conversation.
And when you remind me of, so I call it ranting, prompt ranting, where you should prompt like you talk. Most people don't. They prompt like,
Yeah.
can you help me with this? And it's just like, it's a very broad question versus like what you described exactly how you talk. That's how we think as sales leaders.
Hmm.
And so I would invite anyone, if you're thinking about a good prompt, just think through like what you're trying to solve and kind of speak it out. You can even use a lot of text to speech features, but
Yeah.
how Gorish just explained it, like I might prompt Sybil and be like, so I'm dealing with this problem right now where I think most of our team isn't good at discovery, but I know Pat's really good at discovery. And I think Greg's really good too. And you just leave it at that. You sort of
Yeah.
describe the area, the surface area of your problem and what you're trying to solve.
Dictation helps a lot because it's very much natural flow of how we think, and the AI is learning how to adapt to that thinking mode, so it's not generating fluff answers and I'm not giving it fluff questions. So I love that point. One last question that came up is, when you first rolled out Sybil, How long ago did it take before it actually changed behaviors for the team? Like, was that immediate? Did the reps push back? Did it take you a few months to start collecting the data? What did that process look like?
No, again, I think we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, Gorish. Like,
Mm,
I think the technology was so impressive that I kind of took it for granted as a sales leader. And I was like, oh yeah, everybody's going to use it, and people installed it. Like don't get me wrong, like it was, the assistant was on the majority of our calls, and people might use it for like training, but I think it was like 4 months went by, and I just, again, I was like, man, we are using a rocket to walk. Like I was like, what is going on here? And it really wasn't until, again, I took lead and initiative to not just have my own
mm,
transformational moment, but then have those 15-minute stand-ups
mm,
for that 2 week period where things started to really take off. And what was really great about going through the experience, it reminded me that's what our customers are going through. Like
mm,
our AI is insane. I can't believe what our team has built in such a short amount of time. But people, behavior change is tough. And
mm,
so our own experience had created it with Sybil, really influenced me working with our CS team on the early playbooks for adopt our those teams, our customers, adopting our own AI technology. You really do need to, again, approach it with intention and some sort of collaborative effort
yeah.
where it makes it visible, makes it consistent.
No, I love that. Thank you again so much, Bobby. This was phenomenal conversation. This was probably one of the most fun ones, as you actually showed. You went deep into the whole aspects of how the team is using it, how individual members. Those use cases are like such a beauty to hear. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with the audience here. And have a phenomenal day. I know we are towards the end of the month, and I know you are having a very busy week. So really appreciate you taking the time again. And I would love to catch up again sometime.
Me
Thanks
too.
everyone for joining.
Keep building. I'll keep using.
Well,